resourcefulness, his conscience. As I have said, they are not. The vast majority of those who appear in the public haunts of sin are there, not to engage in overt acts of ribaldry, but merely to tremble agreeably upon the edge of the abyss. They are the same skittish experimentalists precisely who throng the midway at World's Fair, and go to smutty shows, and take in sex magazines, and read the sort of books that our vice-crusading friend reads. They like to conjure up the charms of carnality, and to help out their somewhat sluggish imaginations by actual peeps at it. But when it comes to taking a forthright header into the sulphur, they usually fail to muster up the courage. For one clerk who succumbed to the hours of the pave, there are 500 who succumb to lack of means, the warnings of the sex hygienist, and their own depressing consciences. For one clubman, that is, bagman or suburban vestryman, who invades the women's shops, engages the affection of some innocent miss, lures her into infamy, and then sells her to the Italians, there are 1,000 who never get any further than asking the price of cologne water and discharging a few furtive winks. And for one husband of the Nordic race who maintains the blonde chorus girl in Oriental luxury around the corner, there are 10,000 who are as true to their wives, year in and year out, as so many convicts in a death house, and would be no more capable of any such loathsome malpractice, even in the face of free opportunity, than they would be of cutting off the ears of their young. I am sorry to blow up so much romance. In particular, I am sorry for the suffragettes who specialize in the double standard. For when they get into pantaloons at last, and have the new freedom, they will discover to their sorrow that they have been pursuing a chimera, that there is really no such animal as the male anarchist they have been denouncing and envying, that the wholesale fornication of man, at least under Christian democracy, has little more actual existence than honest advertising or sound cooking. They have followed the pornomaniacs in embracing a piece of buncombe, and when the day of deliverance comes, it will turn to ashes in their arms. Their error, as I say, lies in overestimating the courage and enterprise of man. They themselves, barring mere physical valor, a quality in which the average man is far exceeded by the average jackal or wolf, have more of both. If the consequences to a man of the slightest descent from Virginia were 1/10 as swift and barbarous as the consequences to a young girl in like case, it would take a division of infantry to dredge up a single male flounder of that lex talionis in the whole Western world. As things stand today, even with the odds so greatly in his favor, the average male hesitates and is thus not lost. Turn to the statistics of the vice crusaders if you doubt it. They show that the weekly receipts of female recruits upon the wharves of sin are always more than the demand, that more young women enter upon the vermilion career that can make a respectable living at it, that the pressure of the temptation they hold out is the chief factor in corrupting our undergraduates. What was the first act of the American army when it began summoning its young clerks and college boys and plowhands to conscription camps? Its first act was to mark off a so-called moral zone around each camp, and to secure it with trenches and machine guns, and to put a lot of volunteer termagants to patrolling it, that the assembled jeunesse might be protected in their rectitude from the moral advances of the adjacent milkmaids and poor working girls. 37. Women as martyrs. I have given 3 reasons for the prosperity of the notion that man is a natural polygamist, bent eternally upon fresh dives into Lake of Brimstone No. 7. To these another should be added, the thirst for martyrdom which shows itself in so many women, particularly under the higher forms of civilization. This unhealthy appetite, in fact, may be described as one of civilization's diseases. It is almost unheard of in more primitive societies. The savage woman, unprotected by her rude culture and forced to heavy and incessant labor, has retained her physical strength, and with it her honesty and self-respect. The civilized woman, gradually degenerated by a greater ease and helped down that hill by the pretensions of civilized man, has turned her infirmity into a virtue, and so affects a feebleness that is actually far beyond the reality. It is by this route that she can most effectively disarm masculine distrust and get what she wants. Man is flattered by any acknowledgment, however insincere, of his superior strength and capacity. He likes to be leaned upon, appealed to, followed docilely, and this tribute to his might caresses him on the psychic plane as well as on the plane of the obviously physical. He not only enjoys helping a woman over a gutter, he also enjoys helping her dry her tears. The result is the vast pretense that characterizes the relation of the sexes under civilization, the double pretense of man's cunning and autonomy and of woman's dependence and deference. Man is always looking for someone to boast to. Woman is always looking for a shoulder to put her head on. This feminine affectation, of course, has gradually taken on the force of a fixed habit, and so it has gotten certain support by a familiar process of self-delusion in reality. The civilized woman inherits that habit as she inherits her cunning. She is born half convinced that she is really as weak and helpless as she later pretends to be, and the prevailing folklore offers her endless corroboration. One of the resultant phenomena is the delight and martyrdom that one so often finds in women, and particularly in the least alert and introspective of them. They take a heavy, unhealthy pleasure in suffering. It subtly pleases them to be hard put upon. They like to picture themselves as slaughtered saints. Thus, they always find something to complain of. The very conditions of domestic life give them a superabundance of clinical material. And if, by any chance, such material shows a falling off, they are uneasy and unhappy. Let a woman have a husband whose conduct is not reasonably open to question, and she will invent mythical offenses to make him bearable. And if her invention fails, she will be plunged into the utmost misery and humiliation. This fact probably explains many mysterious divorces. The husband was not too bad, but too good. For public opinion among women, remember, does not favor the woman who is full of a placid contentment and has no masculine torch to report. If she says that her husband is wholly satisfactory, she is looked upon as a numbskull, even more dense than he is himself. A man, speaking of his wife to other men, always praises her extravagantly. Boasting about her soothes his vanity. He likes to stir up the envy of his fellows. But when two women talk of their husbands, it is mainly atrocities that they describe. The most esteemed woman gossip is the one with the longest and most various repertoire of complaints. This yearning for martyrdom explains one of the commonly noted characters of woman, their eager flair for bearing physical pain. As we have seen, they have actually a good deal less endurance than men. Massive injuries shock them more severely and kill them more quickly. But when acute analgesia is unaccompanied by any profounder phenomena, they are undoubtedly able to bear it with a far greater show of resignation. The reason is not far to seek. In pain, a man sees only an invasion of his liberty, strength, and self-esteem. It floors him, masters him, and makes him ridiculous. But a woman, more subtle and devious in her processes of mind, senses the dramatic effect that the spectacle of her suffering makes upon the spectators, already filled with compassion for her feebleness. She would thus much rather be praised for facing pain with a martyr's fortitude than for devising some means of getting rid of it, the first thought of a man. No woman could have invented chloroform, nor for that matter alcohol. Both drugs offer an escape from situations and experiences that, even in aggravated forms, women relish. The woman who drinks as men drink, that is to raise her threshold of sensation and ease the agony of living, nearly always shows a deficiency in feminine characters and an undue preponderance of masculine characters. Almost invariably, you will find her vain and boastful, and full of other marks of that bombastic exhibitionism which is so sterlingly male. End of In Defense of Women, Woman Suffrage, Part 2.